And welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast on the 24/7 Sports Network. Christian Clemente here, joined as I always am by Jason Caldwell. Jason, we are done with the home stretch. Auburn is done with its home games to start the year. We've talked about it a bunch. Interesting schedule where you have 5 straight home games, then you're away for a month, and then you've got 3 more home games to kind of end it. So that has come to a close. I know there are people in that building in terms of recruiting people that put in a ton of extra work behind the scenes, getting visits ready, official visits, all that stuff, that are definitely glad to have a little bit of a breather, as are we in the recruiting sense. Was not a ginormous weekend necessarily for Auburn, Oklahoma. A lot of factors play into that. Your 5th straight home game, so you've already gotten just about everybody that you want on campus. You lost a couple games, so the shine of Auburn, Oklahoma came off a little bit, and then Alabama's hosting Georgia. So it was not exactly the biggest weekend, but there were still some top guys on campus. And the first name that everybody wants to know about is, of course, Deuce Knight, the Notre Dame quarterback commit who took his official visit this weekend. Official visit, for those that don't know, full weekend. It's a 48-hour-long visit, paid for by the school. I believe the school or the athletics department or the football program, whatever it is, whoever exactly is paying for it, pays for, I think it's 2 other people can go along the official visit as well. Those 2 are paid for. So he was in town for the whole weekend, as he has been for 4 total home games now, and still no resolution. And because of that, wrote in my big board on Monday that it's not that Auburn will stop recruiting Deuce Knight. That recruitment is not over from Auburn's sense, but it goes from a, hey, you're our guy, to, hey, you're one of our guys. And these handful of guys, and we'll touch on another one after Deuce, they have a green light now as well. So whoever Auburn could get first, they would probably take now.
Yeah, I still think Deuce is the number one guy. They've invested so much time and effort in him. And so I still think he's the guy that is on the board. And so we'll see if the door opens for other guys. I'm kind of getting some conflicting thoughts. I still think right now that they're going to give Deuce as much time as he needs. I don't know that, we've talked about the last couple of weeks, hey, it feels like it's now or never. I think for Auburn, if you were 5-0 right now, you might be able to do that. With the way it's gone, I think now you're like, hey, take as much time as you need. Obviously, there's other guys that potentially get back in this thing, but I still think Deuce is the guy on the board. Could there be some other guys that potentially slide back in there? Yeah, obviously there's an opportunity for that, but again, Deuce has been a guy that has given you so much. He's visited 4 times in 5 weeks. He's made these bonds. He's made these connections. I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater quite yet. But you have to be protective of yourself too, and knowing that, hey, if this doesn't happen, we need to be prepared to go in another direction.
Yeah, without a doubt. He's still absolutely on your board. You're still calling and texting him every single day. You're still reaching out to him. But now you're picking up contact a little bit more with a guy like Julian Lewis. And the quarterback recruiting in this cycle has certainly taken its fair share of twists and turns. You could go all the way back to last summer when Deuce Knight was interested originally before he committed to Notre Dame. But at the time, Philip Montgomery was not super interested in Deuce Knight, more interested in some other guys. But in terms of more recently, you were recruiting Juju Lewis and Husan Longstreet kind of at the same time, focused on Husan. He ends up going to Texas A&M. You put more pressure and ramp things up with Julian Lewis pretty much all the way through June or towards the end of June, around there. And then at that point, you kind of flipped the board a little bit and you started recruiting Deuce Knight a little bit more. Think there will be more contact with Julian Lewis moving forward. Again, Deuce Knight's probably still your top guy, but like you said, you've got to find a guy somewhere. You need to get a high school quarterback somewhere, and Auburn's at the point now where you start to cover a couple more bases.
Yeah, I think it's, I think Deuce Knight is still number one, and number one by a wide margin at this point still, but it's been number one and nobody else for about the past month. Now you start to go, hey, we better be prepared. And this is obviously Julian Lewis, a guy that's taken an official visit over the summer. Is a guy that Auburn's very familiar with. Recruiting Carrollton really well. Those guys have made connections. And so it's one just to kind of go, okay, maybe perk your ears up a little bit to see, if you have, especially this month, you're not going to have home games. This is going to be more about, contact conversations because you're not going to see a Julian Lewis on campus because Auburn's not going to be here. And so, how this one works, what happens with Deuce Knight, it's all going to be really important. At the end of the day, what happens in the 25 class at quarterback is going to be in addition to going to get a transfer guy. I don't think there's any question. There hasn't been really any question about that anyway. The way this season has played out already, I think there's even less uncertainty. I think we're 100% on board that Auburn will have a high school signee in this class, and they will have a significant transfer portal signee, if at all possible.
Yeah, I mean, and we've said that the whole way. People have said, "Oh, they're not getting Deuce Knight now, or they're not getting Juju Lewis now, so now they're going to get a portal guy." No, it's always been try and get one of those guys, try and get a high school quarterback and get a portal quarterback. The portal quarterback has always been not a 100% guarantee necessarily, because you never say anything with 100% certainty in this business, because, I mean, I was about as certain as you could be that Auburn would have Deuce Knight there for a little bit. And here we still are, and he's still committed to Notre Dame. But we've said the whole way that Auburn's going to get a transfer portal quarterback, and feel very strongly about that now. Like I said, not a ton of big name visitors, so we're going to touch on a young guy and then go into the other three official visitors. Actually, Anthony Crua. I totally forgot about Anthony Crua. Mm-hmm. I was going to talk about Derek Cooper, but we'll get to him in a second. Anthony Crua, the North Carolina linebacker commitment, visited back in the spring and named Auburn his leader, actually, back then when he first got offered. Hadn't visited since then. He committed to North Carolina, maybe a month after that. I think Georgia did offer him, and they've been in contact with him a good bit. He said Michigan has been involved as well. This is a guy who, depending on where things shake out at linebacker, a guy like J.J. Falk, we don't know exactly where he fits in position-wise. Elijah Melendez, he's a linebacker all the way. Bryce Diaz, another guy who you don't know exactly where he's going to be at position-wise. So Crew is an interesting name to keep an eye on. He said he might take an official visit. So that's one that we've been tracking. I mean, he's been on the big boards, but he's one that we'll probably perk up a little bit more and pay a little bit more attention to him moving forward.
Yeah, and I think you look at him, he's a guy that could play the edge, I think he's more of a DeMarcus Riddick type guy that you could play him at the edge, could play him outside, grow potentially into a true kind of inside linebacker, but probably more at home on the edge right now. And so, just give yourself options with athletic guys. You look at this young group of defenders right now, and you look at, DeMarcus Riddick's a guy that's shown up already. Malik Blockton's a guy that's shown up already, and Caleb Harris, and we've seen Jay Crawford now, and then obviously the sophomore group that's coming in. But I think the key is position versatility. Anthony Crew is a guy that you feel like versatility wise could play a couple of spots for you, and I won't be surprised to see that continue to heat up for him, especially as his senior season goes along and he continues to show up. He's adding some pretty big offers as people get kind of a look at him as a senior.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned getting a look at him a little bit more. He's down at Marietta High School now. He was originally from the Philly area, so now he's got a little bit more attention, at least in terms of SEC schools. Switching gears to a young guy, 2026, the one guy that I want to mention in that class, Derek Cooper. The number one athlete in the country in 2026, according to the 24/7 Sports composite rankings. We have him very high in the 24/7 Sports rankings as well, but plays at Chaminade Madonna down there in Florida. So he's teammates with Denarius Gray, and he's an athlete, like I said, so he plays running back and safety. Well, when he's playing running back, he's being coached by Sean Shivers, who brought Derek Cooper and Denarius Gray up for the game this weekend. The second time that Worm has been up this year. I think he was there for Big Cat as well. Yeah, it was Big Cat. And so Derek has heard a ton about Auburn, and this is a guy who, I don't know how to say this without throwing shade at Miami, because they're obviously having a fantastic season, but he was blown away by the atmosphere because that was his first true SEC game that he's seen. compared to going to Miami games where the atmosphere isn't necessarily quite to SEC level. I'll say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it. I mean, you look and obviously, Sean Shivers, a guy that's very, very fond of his time at Auburn, and you got a teammate that's already committed into Darius Gray. That won't hurt Auburn's chances. Again, this is a guy that still has a ways to go, but there's nothing more important than getting guys on campus early and to kind of get that feel and for them to go, hey, that was really good. I want to come back and see that again. And now that you've been to a game, now you get a chance to come back again, probably in the spring, if you're not back again for another game this year. But that's it. That's the building process, the growth of relationships, all those things that are really important in the recruiting process. Still, I mean, NIL is important, all those things. But there's still nothing more important than relationship and bond from the high school side. To me, NIL is a much bigger deal right now in the transfer market. Isn't important in the high school ranks yet, is, but I think it's more important still the relationships building with your teammates and guys in the class. All those things play a big part in this, and I think that's where you start when you get these guys on campus early.
Yeah, and then like I said, this is going to be a short show. We will probably wrap things up here talking about the official visitors. Gonna honestly kind of lump them all together, the three of them, not including Deuce Knight. Alvin Henderson, who's been committed since June. Anquan Fagan's been committed since end of July. Jared Smith right there at the beginning of August. All three of them had really positive things to say about Auburn despite the start of the season. Very similar themes of interviews in terms of, hey, we are prepared to come in and play. This does not shake our confidence in terms of the 2 and 3 start to the season. And guys that feel really confident about their ability to come in and make an impact. Some interesting kind of notes from each guy that I'll mention. Alvin Henderson said some other teams are still recruiting him. And he said he might go take a visit, but he said he just wants to go see a game. He said he might go to the Auburn, Georgia game because he wants to watch Auburn play. Anquan Fagan's, funny enough, he said he was going to go visit, or he's got an official visit set to see Alabama. And we asked him, why did you decide to take that visit? And he said, well, my dad scheduled it. So he's like, I don't know. And he said there's nothing that will change his mind about Auburn. And Jared Smith is going to see some schools as well. South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Georgia also still involved with him. But he said as well right now that it would take a lot for the school to change his mind. So when a guy is going to visit other schools, you definitely have to pay attention to it. You don't just brush it off. You don't take everything at face value. But Alvin and New Boy, Fagans, are two that I definitely feel pretty darn good about sticking in the class. And I feel pretty good about Jared Smith as well. I just feel that much better about New Boy and Alvin Henderson.
Yeah, you never know. That's the one thing. You do all you can do. You feel like, again, the relationships are there. And guys go, hey, I understand that there's going to be some bumps in the road, but you also see young guys playing. And I think that's been the biggest thing right now is watching the young guys and going, see, look, we told you we needed help immediately. These guys are already playing. And we come in next year, they're going to be a little bit older, and you're going to be playing early too as well. And I think that's a big deal. But hey, look, like you can look at it and right now and see it. And I think these young guys see it, and it's probably easier for them to see than it is for fans.
Oh, it definitely is.
Because they're not looking at it through Auburn fan eyes. Even though you're committed to Auburn, these guys didn't grow up coming to Auburn football games. They probably watched some Auburn games over the years. But most of these guys aren't Auburn fans, and even guys in a sense that say, "Yeah, I grew up a fan of Auburn." It's not the same way that I grew up. I grew up coming to football games. I grew up, getting inside the Auburn Tigers magazine and reading newsletters on Thursday afternoons and doing those things. Like that's not what these kids do. And so when they look at it going, "Look, okay, we see it. It's not personal." They go, man, they're invested, of course, but they're invested in what it's going to be like for them in a couple of years and going, hey, look, man, what's going to be like when I get here? And they see it. You look at this team right now and you go, okay, of the guys, you go, man, I'm surefire. I feel like these guys are absolutely NFL players. How many of those guys are upperclassmen right now? Not many. There's some good football players still on this team. And there's some guys that may make NFL rosters. But you go surefire NFL guys, there are not very many of them. And then you look at the sophomore and freshman class and you go, okay, start looking at that group. You start seeing some guys that go, man, they still got a ways to go maturity wise, but there's a bunch of guys in that group. You go, man, I can see that guy being a surefire NFL guy. That's what these kids see. They see future's there, got to get some more pieces. And obviously the quarterback's a big part of that. But I think they see it, and I think these OVs see it. I think that's a big deal. Do you need to go out and show it? Like last Saturday, it didn't turn out the way they wanted to, but I think guys saw, okay, that's more like what I want it to look like. Can you do some of that now on the road this month? I think that's going to be a big deal for all these guys. You don't need to go out on the road this month and get smoked 3 times and come back home. That's going to be a big part of these things too. To keep guys showing them that you're on the right path to getting where they want to go.
Yeah, Anquan Fagan sees Caleb Harris out there making plays. Jared Smith sees Keldrick Falk making plays.
Marcus Riddick now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so no, I agree completely. So that, in terms of visitors, probably going to wrap it up there in terms of recapping the Oklahoma game.
Yeah, basketball real quick, because
Yes.
we didn't have a chance. I think it was at the end of last week where they had a basketball commitment.
Simon Walker.
Yep, Simon Walker from Huntsville High School, and I think it's a really big deal for Auburn. First of all, it's an in-state kid who they've been recruiting for a long time, and so I think it's a big deal, first of all. Second of all, I talked to his coach, Christian Schweers, for a long time. This guy's an Auburn guy, grew up in an Auburn family, but coached at Mountain Brook, so understands basketball in this state. He's been in this state a long time coaching high school basketball, and when he's talking about Simon Walker, he's like, look, this guy that never gets tired. He runs from end to end. He plays the point on our press, and he doesn't worry about his numbers. All he wants to do is win. And when I think about plugging a guy like that into what I know will be a really talented roster, I think about a guy that Auburn hadn't had much of the last few years. Chris Moore's that kind of guy, but I think Simon Walker's a more talented version of a guy like Chris Moore in terms of a wing. Now, he's 6'5", it's a 6'5" wing, but he said, look, he's a better passer than anybody we got on our team. So you start thinking about passer, he can shoot it, but doesn't have to be a volume shooter. That's not his thing. He doesn't shoot a ton. He only averages 11 points a game on a really good team, but can rebound it, shoot free throws well, does all those little things that you want. And so when you think about having a guy like that, I think it's really important. Expecting like football, expecting that roster to grow a little bit to maybe 15 full scholarships, it makes adding a guy like Simon Walker a no-brainer. When you think about the extra numbers, a guy like that who willing to invest, stay around, it's important to him. I like it. I think it's a really good pickup for Auburn, and a guy that I could see being a big part of things for the next 4 years.
In the 2025 class, where you are resetting almost your entire roster from top to bottom because so many guys are seniors, it makes sense to take a guy like that. Now, if it's a class where you're taking 1 to 2 guys, maybe you don't take him at least right away.
Yeah.
But in this class, you absolutely take him, and you swing for the fences there. So glad we touched on that as well. Jason, unless I'm missing anything, we'll probably wrap things up there. We did not go on the road on Friday night. The hurricane obviously affected things for a lot of people, a lot of games and whatnot. So that changed some things. So we did not go to a game, but we'll be at Langston Hughes McIntosh this upcoming Friday.
Yep.
So you got Hollis Davidson on McIntosh going up against Tavares Dice on Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes obviously always loaded, has a couple more guys as well that we'll be watching. So that should be a fun one. But
absolutely. So we'll be there, and just prayers for everybody that's been impacted. I don't know. There are lots of people that are impacted that won't even be able to see this because they don't have internet, power, water. But just praying for the folks from the Gulf Coast all the way up to the mountains in Carolina and those parts. Just hang tough. Hopefully, get everything restored back to close to normal here soon. And we're thinking of you guys.
Yes. So we will end it on that one. And we will catch you guys again here next week. Obviously, no home games, so that will mean no visitors, which opens up the recruiting podcast a little bit. Maybe get a guest on here or there. I've got an idea for one that we'll get on next week, and you guys will probably see a reason why. within the next week or so here. So stay tuned.